Hi everyone, it's Jerry. Let's have a look at a game that was played at the 2019 Tata Steel Masters. On the white end, Viswanathan, and he's playing against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Okay, we have a Caro-Kann Defense, advanced variation, immediate pressure on the base point. It's given up, and now e6. Normally, in the Caro-Kann Defense, this light square bishop, the bad bishop, will try to get outside of the pawn chain. But not with this variation. Black is, with e6, placing an emphasis on simply recapturing the pawn. Okay, let's get some more development in. White preps b4, knight e7, and bishop d3. This is an optimal diagonal for the bishop. There's really no good reason to put it on e2. It's not like we're fearing, in some cases, an annoying pin. You also wouldn't want to be on e2 because you get in the way of a white rook. Once it's on e1, white needs to take into account the e5 pawn. Because of white's decision on move 4 to take away from the center, he doesn't have a convenient defender over e5. What does this mean? The white pieces will have that responsibility. The black pieces can naturally exert pressure on e5. The queen knight developing to c6, queen c7. The king knight could get in on the mix, and let's not forget about the f pawn, who can also be a contributor. Okay, we continue with knight g6, both sides castle. White connects knights, expands on the queen side, and now where do we go from here? Well, when I skimmed through this game, I thought to myself, you follow b4 with bishop to b2. White does, after all, in this position, have to do something about e5. Currently has 2 attackers, 1 defender, so shouldn't we go ahead and develop a new piece? This is not how white plays it. If the bishop is posted on b2, knight f4 can be played, and it's a little bit irritating to deal with this knight. Is white okay with the light square bishop for knight exchange? Well, he is, but he wants to do it in a different way. What am I talking about? Well, in this position, he simply swipes the knight. There's going to be some structural change now on black's kingside. How to recapture? Black is a rule breaker. He takes with the f-pawn. He's not going towards the center, keeping a pawn island of 5. This recapture is fully justified. The computer prefers this recapture over towards the center. What is the big positive here for black? The f-file. The rook is immediately activated. You could also say that the quality of the dark square bishop has been improved. There's a big intersection square here on f2 that white needs to take into account, and he does in this game. Is now the time for white to finally develop the bishop to b2? No. When is it a good time for white to put the bishop on b2? Well, if black makes a different decision on this recapture, if black takes towards the center, this is where the computer likes bishop to b2. You'll note within this structure, f2 is not as sensitive. Well, within this structure, it is. So white's idea is to try and tame the dark square bishop, try and exchange the dark square bishops. And there are 2 reasons that support this way of play. 1, the pressure on f2, as already mentioned, and 2, black has the bishop pair. And usually it's a good strategy to try and eliminate one of those bishops. So, white begins with knight b3. His idea, rook e1, bishop e3. Okay, bishop d7, didn't have any other squares. Rook e1, a5 met with b5, a4, we don't want this bishop getting activated. The pawns are around to tame it. From here, rook to c8. So this is actually a pretty big moment in the game, I would say. I mean, black knows that this is an idea by white, so why is black maybe not trying to prevent this move? In other words, why isn't black maybe playing knight f5 here? It's because white would have this excellent move c4. What is happening with c4? Well, it's carving out a square for a knight. After d takes c, this knight can go here, next here, and this is a very weak square. The computer is really drawn to this variation here. It likes white's position a real lot. Well, with black's move, rook c8 in this position, he's taking the c4 move into account. c4 is not possible in this position. Okay. Bishop e3, dark square bishop exchange, knight f5, rook d3, g5 met with h3. Flight square, we're also stabilizing our knight. We don't want him scared away so easily. And in this position, black continues with b6. Seems like a perfectly reasonable way to play. You don't want this queen forever there watching over the a5 pawn. This seems like the more convenient defender of a5, so she can go elsewhere now. The computer, however, does not like b6 here. It has a preference for a caveman approach. It wants to go with h5, next looking at g4 to rattle the knight position, maybe even open up a square for the queen on g5 or h4. Black does not play in this way. He goes with b6, and now it is all of a sudden, seems like out of nowhere, but this is the case, white is now winning. Can you spot the winning move here for white? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, may seem surprising, and I imagine it surprised Mamedyarov when this game was played. The winning move is c4. The position is getting blasted open now, and white is the better prepared side for the opening up of this position. It seems crazy playing c4. I mean, wasn't the idea with rook c8 to stop this very advance? White is still able to play in this way? Why? Well, if black, first of all, takes with the pawn, that's met with rook takes bishop. We can't do that. We could take with the rook. This is how black plays it. But now there is this follow-up. Rook takes d5. See the idea? If black recaptures the rook, white's recapturing with check, and then he gets the rook back. He's up a pawn in this position. This is completely winning. This isn't just any pawn, by the way. It's a passer. Completely winning position here for white. Now, black in this position plays rook to f7. The rook falls back. Let me go back to this sequence. The pawn advance to c4, the pop quiz I threw your way. If you didn't spot this move, and I imagine many didn't, it's a very sharp looking move. You have to see c4, you have to see the follow-up. Rook takes d5. How could you maybe be in a better position to find this star move? I think if we're maybe a bit more attentive to the rule that was breaking a little further back, this capture f takes g6, maybe we could be a bit closer to finding the c4 move. What am I talking about? Well, when I initially made that move f takes on g6, I only pointed out a positive. I started talking about the rook being activated, the f file being opened. I pointed out the bishop. It became a better piece because of the intersection on f2. But what I didn't point out on purpose were potential drawbacks. I think if you're attentive to the potential drawbacks by capturing away from the center, you might be a little bit closer to finding a move like c4. What is a potential drawback or two or three by capturing in this way? Well, what are some things we could note? E6 is a whole. We can say that the 7th rank has become a little bit more weakened with there no longer being a pawn on f7. If there's ever a white major piece on the 7th rank, this heart of the kingside structure has direct pressure on it. And lastly, the point that's really showing up in this game is the weakened diagonal. No pawn on f7. The king is now more vulnerable to some variations where there's a check on the diagonal. There's now only 2 pawns on this diagonal instead of 3. Only 2 barriers to remove in order for a forceful continuation, such as queen takes d5 check. Okay. In short, being a little bit more attentive to some deficiency on this diagonal may lead you towards c4 in this very position. Okay, we continue with rook takes c4, rook takes d5. Have to do something about the bishop. He defends it. Rook d3, g4 is tried. Again, this is, at this point, just a completely winning position now for white with c4 ever since c4 has been played. The knight simply returns with tempo, and there's also now a second attacker on g4. Rook b4 is played, pawn takes. White is now up a pawn. Knight gets back into the mix. There's now also this threat. The rook is not defending in this current position. Knight takes up this nice central post. Knight is improved. You're cutting off, white is cutting off the pressure on g4 here. Rook f4. Knight c2. The rook is hit, and there is yet again this idea to take advantage of this diagonal. Rook takes, knight follows. Pawn takes rook. One more move in this game. That's how quickly this game collapsed. After c4, queen takes, d5 check. This goes no further. Black simply resigns. He's soon going to lose the bishop. There's nothing he can do about that. If the game continued, let's say the king goes to the corner, white can double up, and you can't defend the bishop. Rook f7 is no good. If you don't try to get out of the pin in this position, there could be e6. You could win the 2 pieces. You could play this 2 pieces for the rook position from there. Completely winning for white. If we have just one sample line, let's say queen c8, we get some exchange like this. Let's say there's a flight square. Look at the perfect coordination. So what if this pawn falls? This guy is running something like this. You could glue that pawn right in, and there's even ideas to check from here with the fork. Also just cutting off the rook from stopping the pawn. Plenty of ways to play it from here to be sure. But Mamedyarov knew there's no hope in this very position and simply threw in the towel. Anyhow, feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.